Hey everybody, welcome back to the Frugal Filmmaker Q&A. That's the show where you ask me a question and I do my best to answer it. If you'd like your question read on the show, please send me an email at thefrugalfilmmaker@gmail.com. That's your best chance to have your question read on the show. Or you can leave a comment below in the comment section. I can pull from there, or send me a question on Twitter at Frugal Filmmaker. If you didn't catch my video last week, I did a review of the Glide Gear DEV 1000 camera slider. It's a small to medium sized slider for small to medium sized cameras. And it's about 23 inches long, so it's kind of compact, but I ended up liking it. And so if you were curious about that slider, please check it out. It's $89 on Amazon. Okay, on to the emails. Our first question comes from Rich Shoemaker, who says, I have a few questions about your vintage glass. What lenses can you use on your Sony and how do you do it? What are the conversion numbers once you adapt the lenses on your camera, and how do you figure that out? What do you look for in a vintage glass and why? Now, if you're not familiar with the term vintage glass, it basically refers to an old 35 millimeter camera lens that you've adapted to your modern digital camera. I've got a Sony NEX5N. It's a mirrorless camera. Those are the easiest cameras to adapt older lenses to. This is a Minolta mounted Vivitar Series 1 zoom lens. This is a 28 to 90 millimeter zoom lens. It's an f2.8 lens. This is one of my favorites. I like this one a lot. But as far as how you do it, it's really simple. First of all, you take the lens like this. This has got a Minolta mount. So all I do is search for Minolta to NEX adapter on eBay, or NEX to Minolta adapter. You'll find these inexpensive spacers essentially that have a NEX mount or an E mount on this side and a Minolta mount on the other side. And of course, this all depends on what camera you have, because you can find all different kinds of combinations of these various adapters that are cheap. They'll fit on your camera and allow you to use older lenses, which I really like because these lenses tend to be fairly inexpensive. Not as expensive as a few years ago when everyone was throwing them away, thinking they weren't useful anymore, but they are very useful, easy to adapt, and a lot of these old lenses have a lot of character that you might really like as far as contrast and color and lens flares. Really, really interesting. I really like them, and a lot of them are very affordable. As far as conversion numbers, I think Rich is talking about what the actual focal length ends up being because of the crop sensor in a lot of these inexpensive cameras. My camera has one of the better crop factors. It's only 1.5. So it's easy to figure out what the lens is going to end up looking like. For example, if you take a 50 millimeter lens, you have a 1.5 or 1.5 crop, it's going to end up looking like a 75 millimeter lens. My camera, the Sony NX5N, actually has one of the better crop factors because it's not as large as some of the other cameras. I believe Canon's have like a 1.75 crop. And it goes all the way up to like the Blackmagic Pockets camera has like a 3 times crop, which is really, really big. I prefer to get the most out of my lens as possible, so I'm glad I only have 1.5. If you get a full frame camera, you get the entire lens focal range. I always go to eBay for my vintage glass because I tend to get the best deals there, but you do have to know what you're looking for as far as the text. If you know exactly what lens you're looking for and you just have to do homework to figure that out, look in the description of the lens and make sure you see things like the lens is clear of scratches, there's no fungus, there's no haze, the aperture operates smoothly, and the focus operates smoothly. You can get away with a lot of cosmetic damage that doesn't affect the image, but I always watch out for things like dented rings, because if you want to screw in a filter or an ND filter or something like that on the outside and it has a dented ring, you won't be able to do that. So just things like that. I don't care about wear, I just care about the image mostly and the ability to add accessories. So that's what I tend to look for. Next we have Jay Miller, who says, I have a mini DV camcorder I plan to use for B-roll footage, but don't know a good way to get the footage to my computer. My computer only has USB ports. Would you have any ideas? What Jim here is trying to do is get mini DV footage through the FireWire output into his computer that does not have a FireWire input. Now this can be tricky because there is no FireWire to USB conversion that I'm aware of. If you have an older laptop, you can get like an express card adapter that will allow you to put FireWire ports onto your laptop. Or if you have a computer, you can get a FireWire card that will allow inputs. If you don't have those things, I'm not sure how you can do this. You might have to dedicate or get an older computer that has a FireWire input that you could use. I've got an old laptop that I just keep because it has that FireWire input, and I can get footage from older mini DV sources right into that laptop. So you might have to go looking for another computer, an older computer, refurbished computer, or if you have a desktop or a tower, just buy a card, buy an expansion card that will allow you to get that into your computer, because USB won't do it. Okay, our next email comes from Dark Sunrise, or Greg, who says, I'm looking to record sound for a film project I'll be doing soon. I want to run 3 lav mics and a shotgun. What is the best sound recorder, rent or buy? Well, first of all, I think we need to address the fact that whatever sound recorder you're going to get, it's only going to have, at least the consumer models or the lower end, lower budget models, are going to have 2 inputs, 2 XLR inputs, such as the Zoom H4n or the Tascam D40, I believe it is. But you apparently have more than 2 microphones. It looks like you have 4, 3 lavs and a shotgun. So you are going to have to go through a mixer before you get to the recorder. So you're probably aware of that, but I'm just reiterating in case other people don't exactly know what you're referring to here. But that means you have to have a mixer, not only a physical mixer or electronic mixer, we have to have somebody running it, also referred to as a mixer, because they're going to have to mix these 4 sources down to 2 channels so you can record them into your recorder. As far as renting or buying goes, I think buying a decent recorder is a good idea because you're going to use it over and over and over. You're probably going to record a lot of audio the more movies you make, and it just comes in really handy. I don't know if I'd recommend renting one of those, unless you want to rent something that's really high-end, which you're not going to be able to have, but it's a really good investment to buy a digital audio recorder because you'll use it a lot, I promise. Okay, our next letter comes from Keith Kunn, who says, to prevent rolling shutter, is it best to put your camera in manual mode, or is autofocus okay, or does manual or autofocus even matter? We have the dreaded rolling shutter or jello shutter, which is basically caused by your sensor scanning from left to right or up and down, and it's just not fast enough to cover action scenes. So if you ever see video that has the kind of bendy image, that's the rolling shutter in action. And it's awful looking. I hate it, but it always pops up in cheaper cameras because that's I guess the most inexpensive technology there is, so that's what we get. If you want a global shutter, or which is a non-rolling or non-jello shutter, you're going to spend $2,500 to $3,000. So you just kind of have to deal with it and work around it, and maybe either live with the fact that your image is going to slide back and forth if you do some quick swish pans, or just don't do swish pans. All right, finally we have a message from Twitter. Brittany Garth says, any tips for a filmmaker who's just starting out? You know, this is a really great question because it's something that I might hear a lot, or you might hear a lot as people ask you as they see you're a filmmaker and they wonder, how do you become a filmmaker? Well, first thing I want to say is if you want to be a filmmaker, just grab whatever camera you have, whatever microphone you have, whatever talent for cast and crew you have, and just go make a movie. It doesn't matter if it's going to be great, or it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be long. Shorter the better, I think, for your first few films. Just go out there and do it. Just grab a camera, grab your cell phone camera, go out there and make a movie, and make a lot of mistakes and learn from them. If you want to get more serious, you can kind of look at my blog. I've got what I've called the Frugal Filmmaker Philosophy, and I've got a bunch of things listed there. I think it's 10 things that will tell you some things you can work on to maybe becoming a more frugal filmmaker, but still a better filmmaker. And one of them is on there is just do it. Just make a movie. And you're not going to know what you're doing, but you can get a lot of experience from learning and growing and falling on your face and things like that. So just don't get discouraged, because it's going to take you a long time to find your voice and to find your style. But the only way you're going to get to that point is by making movies over and over and over. If you look at the film greats throughout history, they spent a long, long time making a lot of movies until they kind of hit their classic period. So the same thing is going to happen to you as well. Okay, that's everything this week. Remember, if you want your question read on this show, please send me an email at thefrugalfilmmaker@gmail.com. That's the best chance you have of getting it read on the show. You can also comment below. I might be able to pull a question from there. Or send me a message on Twitter @frugalfilmmaker. Now, I've got another video coming up this Thursday or Friday, and then another Q&A on Monday, so stay tuned for that. We'll see you then. Bye.